Hey guys, I'm Daniel. Welcome back to The Lip. Today we have a great guest, Nev Schulman. He's the creator of Catfish, which is an awesome documentary and now a show on MTV in its third season. Nev, thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to have you. And just so we can jump into the right point in the story, I think the best place to start is telling us, what is a catfish?
Well, in addition to being a form or species of fish that spends a lot of time swimming in the murky waters of often rivers, and I think there are also some saltwater catfish. It is now a term used to refer to somebody who creates a profile online, whether they are misrepresenting themselves in a small way or a much larger way. They use that profile to generally engage in a romantic relationship with someone else for any period of time. And whether they reveal themselves or not, they are sort of deceiving the other person.
And in 2010, this actually happened to you, correct?
That's right. I was living in New York City, met this family through Facebook in Michigan. They were super friendly and funny and artistic. And over the course of 9 months, my friendships grew and I became very kind of involved with the family and ended up kind of romantically involved with one young lady whose name was Megan. And I sort of thought like we were kind of falling in love. But when I went to eventually meet this family, with a little bit of suspicion about some of the things they told me, I discovered that all of them, all 14 people and Facebook pages and email accounts whom I had been communicating with, were actually the creative creation of one woman who had sort of lured me into this web of lies.
That's insane, and I want to give people a visual taste of what that looks like.
Sure.
Let's go to the trailer if you haven't seen it.
Hello?
Hey, Megan.
Hi, how are you?
Your voice is not at all what I expected. I mean, she must be pretty awesome, at least from Facebook. How long have you been calling each other babe? 2 weeks, maybe? I'm pretty good. I'm good. Last night we had a great talk. She told me about a chicken makes an egg every day. Did you know that? Megan, I take you to my room and dry you off, touching every inch of you. Megan is a dancer. She sings. Her sister is an artist. This is the painting of Angela that she did. That's the mom? Yeah. Wow. I know. She's hot. The Facebook family. Well, that's what we'll call them. I really cared about this girl. And had a real conversation with her. So you're full on going out? I guess I don't know that much about her. I don't really want her getting hurt. I'm not getting hurt. So what's the next move?
I think we drive up to Megan's farm in Michigan.
This is it. This is it. Just pull up.
Do you want to drive into the driveway?
Yeah. Are you crazy?
What do you mean?
Drive into the driveway.
What do you mean?
Don't back into it.
Why not?
Because then we can't see what's in front of us.
I'm a little scared. This place gives me the creeps. Let's go.
Just found like the tip of the iceberg. You gotta stop. No.
That was a little ominous.
Yeah, I mean, it is a mystery at its heart. And I think the mystery of my relationship and the fact that I went on this sort of adventure to discover the truth is not only what makes the film interesting to watch, but also what compelled a lot of other people who are in my situation in their own online relationships to reach out to me subsequently for help kind of discovering the truth about their internet love.
Well, I want to talk about some of the specific cases, but before we do that, I want to dig into the psychology. In all the research you've done now, the traveling, you've met thousands of people at this point. Can you give us a little bit of insight into, first, the mindset of a catfish? Why would someone want to dupe someone or trick someone?
Yeah, I mean, there are different types of catfish. And I think it's important just to note that our intention in calling the film Catfish and referring to the woman who catfished me as a catfish wasn't to say that she's a bad person or that she intentionally set out to create this web of lies and snare me in it. It's more to refer to people who take chances, do things maybe a little unconventionally, perhaps often cause trouble or break rules, but make life interesting.
Yeah.
And so keeping that in mind, I think what makes a catfish, or the types of catfish that there are, it's really not usually people who are intending to go out and deceive someone. It's someone who is struggling in some way, whether they feel trapped in their life, geographically, financially, socially, or perhaps they have insecurities or they're unhappy with something about themselves, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, they're confused. And so they go to the easiest place that there is now to express themselves or explore ideas or try on a new hat or put on a mask of someone they'd rather be. And so that's what they end up doing. They go online, they make a fake profile, or they change certain things about their own profile. And without really thinking about it, they begin interacting with people who are seeing them as this other person. And they're getting the attention they want. They feel good. Friendships develop. Friendships turn into flirtation. Flirtation turns into relationships. And before they know it, they're wrapped up in this thing for months or years. And they don't feel like it's a good idea to tell the truth at this point, because then they destroy this whole relationship that they built with this person, because then they'll think they're a liar. And so it sort of snowballs into what we usually see on the show.
So there's definitely a point of no return where you start to pretend this, it's like make-believe, but then it becomes real and you can't go back.
Right. I don't think it's the intention, in many cases, of people to get involved in a deceptive online relationship. Now, there are, of course, cases where people do specifically use a fake profile as a tool to get revenge on someone or mess with someone, or in some cases to take advantage, whether it's financially or even emotionally, of others. So there are many species of catfish.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy at this point.
Yeah.
Well, and I know I've seen many episodes of the show, and can you talk specifically about some of the more malicious catfish that you've seen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a sort of gray area where catfish and I think scam artists sort of overlap.
Interesting.
And we had an episode recently where there was a whole community of people in the Maryland, D.C. area who had been victims of someone's scam. A young man who, both online and in person, had created a persona for himself as this up-and-coming hip-hop producer, booked appearances, got people to book him security in limos and hotels, and showed up at clubs and got tables and all this stuff under the presumption that he was this Kanye West producer, and that other people were going to be showing up. Of course, never did. And so a young lady reached out to us and said, "Hey, this kid took me for $1,000 and wasted a couple weeks of my time and all these other people's time and services. I want to catch him." So we did. We sort of used her as bait because we knew that he cared about her and their friendship. We organized a meeting up and we confronted him and said, like, "Why are you doing this? What's this about?" In the effort to help him hopefully stop doing it, because he was really taking advantage of people. I don't think he understood exactly what the ramifications of his actions were.
Yeah, and I've noticed that on the show a lot of times you'll confront a catfish, and I don't think that they even realize how much damage they've caused in many cases.
Yeah.
And then if they care about the person that they're duping, then it makes the blowback even worse for them.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part about making the show is that in a lot of cases, the catfish do know what they're doing is wrong, and they even feel bad about it. In fact, a lot of the stories that we get come to us from the catfish side of things. People who feel so terrible, they feel this weight, this burden that they've been lying to a friend or lover on the internet for a long time. They want to come clean, but they fear if they simply told the truth, the other person would freak out, be very upset that they'd been lied to and deceived, and likely sort of discard them. And so they're hopeful that by coming on the show, if that is in fact what happens, maybe we can facilitate some kind of amicable exchange and they can be heard and explain themselves in a more objective and non-judgmental way. So we then, or the producers I should say, orchestrate very delicately and staying out of it as much as possible, a scenario by which the other person, the hopeful, reaches out to me because they understand their online boyfriend or girlfriend wants to meet. And so we sort of just pick up from there. They have no idea, of course, that the other person's sort of already expressed interest in meeting. And the other person doesn't know that we're actually doing it. They just sort of think maybe it could happen, so they don't know when or why or how.
That's very delicate. That's a
so
very
yeah,
delicate balance.
it's tricky, but everything is real. The feelings are real. The relationships are real. We haven't created any scenarios. We don't tell people what to say or do. It's very unpredictable.
Yeah, I've seen some things that could not have been scripted any better.
Yeah. And we've been surprised ourselves. Many times. So.
Well, what? And this is I love this slide on the screen right now. This is one of my favorite episodes. Some people will actually give their supposed internet boyfriend, girlfriends their bank information and their social security stuff and all this.
Yeah.
And what type of person is a prime target to be tricked?
Well, the funniest thing that we hear more and more now is people giving their Facebook passwords. So that is the sort of modern day symbol of trust. If you give me your login info, then I know I can trust you. And okay, I guess I understand that. But it's interesting because I'm not really sure why people do this. I think they are so excited and hopeful and even a little desperate in some cases that this relationship could be their dream person, happily ever after, that they're willing to do whatever they can to hold on to it, to convince the other person that they're serious. And even if it means giving personal information out, there is a trust that is developed between two people when you remove the physical element of a relationship and you talk every day, and friendship, like I said, slowly develops and builds.
But all this, even in the face of a lot of times, numerous reasons not to believe,
Right.
So people don't show up at supposed meeting times, and there's just clear evidence that it's not them.
I know that the tricky thing to remember, and I think one of the reasons that I am sort of suited to do this job is that when you fast forward through a relationship, whether it's 3 months or 3 years on the show in 5 minutes, and you say oh yeah, we've been talking for 3 years, we send a lot of messages, we talk all the time, it's hard to feel that connection. It's hard to understand that it started very slowly and text messages led to phone calls and you've been talking all the time. You don't see those conversations. And so when someone says, yeah, we had a plan to meet up and then they canceled, it's probably because they had been for months talking about how their grandma was sick or their mom was battling cancer, and the weekend they were supposed to meet, all of a sudden someone checked into the hospital or had to go to the ER. And so it's not just some crazy out of nowhere excuse, it's a slowly formulated backstory that we don't get and feel because we're not there for all that relationship. So I have to kind of remind myself of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, and I think that that's what happens in normal, I'm using my air quotes, normal relationships too,
Yeah.
My girlfriend can bail on me right now and I'm not going to disown her,
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's par course with the kind of the way that most relationships go. But I'm curious, how do you, when you go into investigation mode? So Nev is here, and what's the process for discovering if someone's real or not online?
It's really hard. Proving someone is fake is sometimes as hard or harder than proving someone is real.
Interesting.
Which I know seems strange, but it's almost easier, or rather harder, to prove a lie. So, if someone creates a fake identity and a fake name and a whole sort of bevy of profiles across the internet, if they're not real, it's hard to find concrete proof of that, because, some people are weird and private, and some people don't have background sort of files or their name associated with phone numbers. So we just kind of have to keep looking into them until we find somebody or something that is real. So one of the things we do on the show that is awkward, and I think a lot of people don't want to do in their own lives, is we reach out to the other people on these fake profiles, the friends who have commented. And
seen that. Awkward.
And that's always really weird because
So
most
weird.
of the time they don't actually know the person either.
Yeah.
In which case it's kind of becomes clear that perhaps that other person is in fact a catfish. But when they do, it's well, yeah, I do know this person. okay, great, how do you know them? Where do they live? Is this true about them? And we don't want to be really creepy, and we don't obviously have any kind of legal standing to be interrogating these people. So fortunately, as the show is more successful and people have seen it, they're willing to participate. But we don't want to blow up someone's spot in that sense, whether it's with their job or their friends. So we tread very lightly.
Well, you're on season 3 now. I've seen some of the season 1 clips, and you're like, "Hi, this is Nev with MTV. You probably haven't heard of us, but we want to know if
now
you're
I'm
friends
just like,
with
yeah,
us."
it's Nev.
Yeah, it's Nev. They're like, "Oh yeah,
I need your help."
Yeah. So okay, well, so I mean, for the process, I mean, I see you use Google image search. You'll take a picture, you'll like drag it in to see if that works, then you'll cross-reference profiles, and sometimes you'll find multiple profiles with the same picture but different names. Yeah. So then, how do you determine which name? It's like this roulette thing.
No, I mean it's really hard. What you see on the show is 4 or 5 minutes of what is always at least a 6 or 7 hour investigation, where most of the time we're just sifting through senseless information, looking through pages of results on Google, cold calling random people who have nothing to say or just don't answer their phones, sending out like generic kind of messages, copy pasting them to everybody that we see who comments on a picture. I mean, it's a lot of that.
Have you ever had anybody get mad at you for questioning them? Stop calling me,
No. I think, I'm trying to remember, I think we had one person though who called us back just really excited because she just wanted to talk to us. She knew nothing. She was just really jazzed to be on the show. No, I mean, for the most part, we're very fortunate. People see that what we're doing is meant to be helpful, and they appreciate that we're out there. So, and everybody's usually happy to find out the truth, whether it affects them in a big way or small. So.
Well, there was something that happened in the major news media recently, and there was a football player in Notre Dame, Manti Te'o.
That was
right.
Yeah.
That's a huge.
If that was recent for you, I don't know.
What was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, I don't watch too much regular news anymore.
Yeah.
But that's a great example of someone being completely taken for a world. And what happened with that situation?
I think perhaps we'll never know exactly.
Well, that line was so Manti Te'o was.
I understand. I understand what happened.
Yeah.
He had a girl that he was sort of involved with online. They became very intimate. She then got sick. Subsequently passed away. He was very upset.
Passed away.
Only to find out that she wasn't in fact real. Now, when he found that out, and if he knew who was behind it sooner or later than he revealed, or I don't know. I certainly do know how embarrassing and awkward it is to have that happen to you. So I
clearly
So I can understand why, if he did know sooner, he maybe didn't want to say anything, because it makes him look a little bit like a dope.
Yeah.
And it also kind of puts in question the whole national support and did he do this for publicity?
Right.
So I mean, in my situation, it was, though it got turned into a film, I was not in the public eye before it happened. He was, so I can understand why he would be hesitant to, just sort of come out and say it.
I love what you said there, and he's a great example because he's like a Heisman candidate at that point. But I love what you said, because I think sometimes the conception is you must be stupid to get tricked like this, and you're clearly not stupid. He's not an idiot, and it can happen to anyone.
I mean,
with enough investment emotionally.
I agree. I think a lot of people ask me like, oh God, how do you deal with these people on the show? They're so dumb or naive, and they're not. Sure, there are aspects of their life or personality that are less developed or need some work, and most of them are younger, and they're looking for love, which is primarily, and maybe not even love, just affection, attention. They just want to be seen and heard. And more now perhaps than before, or same as ever, young people looking to figure out who they are and seeking affection will do it wherever they can and where they feel safe. And schools are increasingly...
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Anyway, schools are increasingly tough for young people growing up. Relationships with parents may not be great. If you don't have good friends you can trust, the internet just becomes this great place to go to for support and to find people who understand you and your feelings. And so I don't think it's that people are dumb. I think it's that they're vulnerable. And they, like anybody, want to be heard and they want to feel affection.
Well, that's a great point, because I now I'm curious with all this kind of the movement with some of the negative things about catfish and deceiving people. How does it say for the state of online dating? It's so huge now, and what does it say for the state of where are we at in terms of socially accepting that as a medium of meeting people?
I think we're a lot further now than we were 10 years ago. I mean, I almost feel like you're more likely to hear someone is dating online than they are dating in person at this point. Everybody's got Tinder, and everybody's probably signed up for a dating website too. My concern is that the internet has introduced this idea that we now have access to sort of all the fish in the sea. It used to be there are more fish in the sea.
Plenty of fish,
Right. And that was sort of a nice concept, like, okay, maybe this isn't the right exact person, but there are others. Now there's just sort of this global, almost infinite pool of fish. And so I don't think people are spending the time or giving enough effort to actually taking what could be a mediocre first date or even like a reasonably interesting conversation past the beginning stages, because they'll think like, I'll just keep swiping left until I find the perfect guy.
Think about even the concept of Tinder. Swipe, swipe, swipe,
right.
swipe.
It's like this very surface, thin way of interacting with people that doesn't really put any skin in the game and makes it very easy to disengage. And so you don't end up actually learning about yourself. You don't really end up discovering what you really want or like and don't like in somebody, because you're never really working through what are inevitable compromises and obstacles in any relationship. And so I'm just worried that young people now are not putting in like the work to actually feel real meaningful affection and love, and they're just sort of crossing their fingers and pulling the slot machine arm, thinking like, I'll just keep pulling it until I hit triple bar and then I'll be set. But
that, and also think about it, they have all these criteria and qualifications, and they're like, I have 10 bullet points, and I can just keep looking until I find someone who matches all 10. It just doesn't happen.
Right. Well, it's like it's gambling, basically.
And so, do you think that there's a point where,
it does happen for some people?
Yeah, but do you think there's a point where, in the dating world, online or offline, you get to a point where you're like, this is a person who has enough of the qualities I like that I'm going to compromise on it. Where's that point? How do you know?
I mean, I've never actually been online dating. I've never registered for a dating website. I've never been on Tinder. Yeah, no, I even my online relationship was just a result of Facebook friendship.
Yeah,
it wasn't like I went seeking love online.
You're not on OkCupid then?
No, I'm really not on anything. Although someone did create a fake dating profile for me, I think, on OkCupid using my picture, which was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Very
of all the people to use, it's pretty funny and ballsy. But I mean, yeah, I think you do. Even if you find that 10 out of 10 on a dating app that uses algorithms to pair you together, nothing can account for what it feels like when you sit down with someone.
Absolutely.
And even if you sit down with them and there are sparks and it's love at first sight, at some point you're going to need to work through some shit, right? It's never going to be perfect forever. Something's going to come up and you're going to have to work through it. And so rather than prolonging that process in the search for this perfect person, who inevitably you'll have to go through that anyway, work through it with someone else sooner. I mean, I'm not saying settle, but
I know.
Don't just think you're gonna meet Prince Charming.
Well, she's got 3 teeth. Might as well work through it.
Yeah.
No, I know. Well, I think that's a great point. I think our culture perpetuates looking for the models and the perfect fits, and they don't really.
Right. Well, plus we're also accustomed now to being judged by everybody, people we know and don't know.
Yeah.
That I think we're just limiting our field of view and all trying to fit ourselves into this socially acceptable, good-looking, clean, easy to digest, appealing version that will get more likes on Instagram.
Well, and I know, especially for men and probably for women too, we're very much judged by the women that we keep around us. Like a lot of young men want to have a really attractive girlfriend because that makes them look great on Instagram, and now they're the man.
Sure.
It's like another object to have.
Yeah,
right?
I think so long as we are increasingly projecting our lives and selves to everybody else, we're going to continue to feel the harsh reality of being judged by everybody else, which isn't something you should be considering in your everyday sort of personal decisions. I mean, I think it's important to consider how people maybe will see you or what they'll think of things that you do or say. But if all you're trying to do is appeal to the most amount of people in how you identify yourself, you're selling yourself short, and everybody will end up being the same, rather than actually expressing who you are, being an individual, and attracting the people who are interested in that. You're just going to attract the same people who are trying to do the same thing as you, and we're all going to sort of just be homogenized into this one kind of blah category that is like acceptable and likable, but not very interesting.
It's like the dating zombie apocalypse.
Sort of.
Well, so two questions that have really been kind of nagging at me. I want to know what the most interesting couple that you followed at this point has been, and it can be interesting in terms of the most drama or the most surprise that you've encountered. What's been the most interesting couple?
I think most interesting couple. But episode that's aired, I guess, right?
Sure.
Because there's a couple great stories that we didn't shoot for a lot of reasons. But I mean, I always sort of end up referring back to an episode from, I think, season 2 with a girl named Kaya who had gone on a website, created a profile for a girl that was very different than her, in both race and body type, and met a really cute guy. She revealed that she was lying shortly after they started talking. Their relationship grew. She was, being honest, and he was okay with it. And I think a year and a half went by. They were basically in love. He told her he had moved to California to do a semester abroad from, I think, where he lived in Europe somewhere. And this was their opportunity to finally meet. And when we went to meet this guy, it turned out to be a transgender man. So, born a woman, but transitioning into being a man. And also not in any way what his pictures and how he had presented himself to look. And if that alone wasn't sort of interesting enough, what was amazing was that their friendship and even sort of romantic connection was strong enough that they kind of gave it a try. They still went out. I think they had a relationship for a few months after that. And that just kind of blew my mind that, everybody comes on the show and says, oh, I don't really care if they're not how they look or if they're a little bit heavier or if not everything they told me is true, just so long as that friendship and connection is there, because that's really what this was for. And then the door opens and it's someone they're not attracted to and it's like, ugh, never mind, I don't think this is going to work. And that's not, of course, the only reason. They've also been lied to and justifiably don't necessarily feel that connection anymore. But the bottom line is, like, physical attraction is a huge part of any relationship,
sure,
especially a romantic one. And that was just amazing to me to see two people who catfished each other, essentially, using unbelievably different sort of extreme versions of the people they wish they were, and ended up still feeling a romantic connection. Yeah.
That's actually, and that answers the second question, which was the most heartwarming story. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was.
So I think I want to know, in terms of the audience, in terms of what you've learned, what's the kind of a takeaway that you can give us about that you learned about relationships based on your work?
I mean, I've learned a lot, and I've also learned a lot from the relationship that I've been in over the past 3 years while I've been making this show. And I'm learning a lot about relationships right now. I mean, not right now, like with you, but right now in my life. Although maybe with you after this.
We'll talk.
Anyway, so I think one of the key things that I've learned about both relationships between two people and also just how to relate to people is how significant and surprisingly undervalued listening is. I know that almost sounds sort of cheesy, but what I've learned when I go to meet these people is that no one's ever really asked them a question and then just given them the floor to answer it. When you have a conversation, you're normally listening to the other person thinking, this is what I'm going to say next. And you're talking about something that you already know about, and you probably already have things you want to talk about and say, and it doesn't really have any emotional weight to it. You know, it's just, oh, I saw this movie, or oh, the weather, or oh, how was school? But when you ask someone, hey, how are you feeling? Or how does that make you feel? Or do you really think this? And then you just sit back and listen to them, and sometimes awkwardly wait for them to actually give you an answer that is real. You discover a lot, and people feel very empowered when they all of a sudden feel like they're being heard. So that applies across the board in any relationship.
That's awesome, man. And I'd encourage you guys to apply this to your own relationships. What do you think about what you've learned today? Leave a comment below. And as always, I'm Daniel. We'll see you next time on The Lip.